Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ROTOPOD to get a 100% deposit match over at Prize Picks. The top 400 prospect rankings were fully updated Friday morning, along with the ETAs and team top 20s. So this is the first mailbag in about 2 months. So fun to be back at it. And you guys had just a ton of great questions. A ton of great feedback on the update, and I always feel bad for that week or so leading up to the update. I kind of go dark a little bit just because for every question I'm answering, it's time I'm not using on the update. But glad you guys were able to get a bunch of questions in for this episode, and I thank you for that. I'm always kind of pumping up the MLB Discord room over at RotoWire. Definitely recommend checking that out if you're a subscriber. RotoWire.com/chat if you want to get the Discord app. But one of the great things about it for me is I just get such great feedback from you guys. And I made an accidental omission of Caleb Durbin of the Yankees on the top 400. And I'm sure Dylan White would eventually message me about that, but someone just mentioned it right away in the RotoWire Discord room, and I was able to add Durbin to the update that day. So, if you're adding 102 players, it's possible to accidentally omit one. So it was 103 additions to this most recent update of the top 400. Very, very fun update, very, very challenging update, just because you're trying to evaluate how real all of these pop-up / breakouts are. And you're trying to evaluate how much to hold a bad start against players who are already on the list, or how much to bump guys up for a good start and that type of thing. And, got a lot of questions about like the arrows for this update. This update, I think maybe more than any other update, the arrows don't add a ton of value because there were players that I legitimately was surprised to see an arrow either up or down next to their name when I looked at the update. And, usually it's a guy that like didn't go down or actually went up, and it's because of all the guys that graduated ahead of them. So, look at the arrows, but the arrows definitely aren't everything. And I guess without, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and give us a like. Really appreciate that. So without further ado, let's get to the questions. First one from J3KDF. He wants to know, where are the tiers? So this is always a good way to start off the mailbag episode after a big update. So we got to figure out where the tiers are. It's challenging. Like I definitely think Wyatt Langford, Paul Skeens, Jackson Holliday, Junior Caminero, they're all in a tier. And then it's kind of debatable to me as to whether James Wood should be in that tier or not. I kind of am opting for a mini second and third tier. So from 5 to 6, I've got a tier of just James Wood and Jason Dominguez. And then just from 7 to 8, I've got another tier of Kobe White and Walker Jenkins. Maybe you could argue for James Wood to be up in tier 1, and then maybe Dominguez leading off that second tier with Mayo and Jenkins. But, for me, it's like a tier is like I would consider this player for this player. I don't see myself trading any of those top 4 guys for Wood, and I definitely don't see myself trading Dominguez for Mayo or Jenkins. So that's kind of how I got there. But challenging to kind of separate that top 8, exactly where the tiers are, how many tiers there are. And then there's another tier of 8 guys from 9 to 17. Christian Scott, Jordan Lawler, Jackson Jobe, Xavier Isaac, Brady House, Noel B. Marte, Lazaro Montes, Roman Anthony, Carson Williams. So that's 4 tiers, and that gets us through the top 17. From there, the tiers are always, there's, more tiers at the top, and then it really opens up. So tier 6 or tier 5, I had from 18, which is Jet Williams, through 39, which is Colson Montgomery, which feels right to me. It's a big tier of a bunch of talented prospects. I feel like I'm probably higher than most people on Jet Williams and lower than most people on Colson Montgomery, so it would make sense that Williams would lead off that tier and Montgomery would finish it up. Tier 6, Felnin Celesten of the Mariners, sitting there at 40. All the way through Adael Amador. Got a question about him, down at 80. So that's a important distinction, right? Like from 40 to 80, I'm saying all those guys are in one tier. So if you see someone I've got at like 75 and you like them more than someone I got at like 43, that's actually not even that controversial to me. So this is definitely good to know. Tier 7 gets even bigger. Robbie Snelling at 81 through Cole Young at 152. And then it really opens up after that. I don't even keep track of the tiers beyond that last big tier within the top 150 or so. All right. Question from Danny J. Brady House of the Nationals rising above Dylan Cruz. What are you seeing? So House and Cruz, obviously on that same AA Harrisburg team. They've got very, very similar plate discipline numbers and production numbers at AA. More power for House, more speed for Cruz. But with House being 15 months younger, I don't even think of Cruz as necessarily being safer than House, because House is going to play a really good third base. Talked a little bit about him with Arm Layton a couple episodes ago, but when one guy's that much younger and the production's about the same, and it's easier for me to argue House over Cruz, I think, than it would be for me to argue Cruz over House at this point. And I think House having a higher ceiling than Cruz, I definitely that rings true to me. House is the one that I could see hitting 30 plus homers. I don't see that from Cruz. And I think most people would say that Cruz has a higher floor. I don't know if that's even really borne out in the numbers. That's definitely would be the narrative, but higher ceiling definitely for House to me. And he's 15 months younger. We know that he doesn't even have to be that great offensively early in his career to play every day at third base. So I think there's a lot to like with House, and I assumed that would be a little controversial having him in the top 15, but I think he deserved it. Okay, let's head to a sponsor break quick here. Have you ever dreamed of stepping into the shoes of general manager? Welcome to So Rare MLB, a groundbreaking fantasy baseball game where you call the shots. Take charge and make your managerial mark by collecting officially licensed digital player cards of your favorite MLB stars. These aren't just any cards. They're your ticket to compete for over $1 million in total cash rewards and other amazing prizes. Imagine winning VIP trips to the MLB All-Star 2024 or getting your hands on signed merchandise from top MLB players. Here's how it works. Use your cards to set your lineup each game week. Real-world plays like hits, strikeouts, and homers will power your team's performance. Climb the leaderboards and snag weekly wins, from cash prizes to more cards and unforgettable experiences. But there's more. Build an iconic collection of your favorite teams and players to unlock gameplay bonuses and exclusive rewards. The rarer the card, the higher your score and the bigger your edge in competitions. And when you're ready to trade, the So Rare Marketplace offers a vibrant community of managers. Engage in live auctions, make instant buys, or trade cards peer-to-peer. Starting is absolutely free. Draft your first team of common cards today and feel the thrill of competition as you climb the ranks to baseball mastery. What are you waiting for? Join So Rare MLB today. Transform your passion for baseball into a quest for glory and get rewarded for your baseball savvy. Sign up today with the link in the description and get 50% off your first pro cards, up to $50. It's your passion rewarded. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. You just pick more or less on 2 or more players' stats and watch the winnings roll in. Tomorrow night in the Western Conference Finals, I like the over on 8 rebounds plus assists for Kyrie Irving. And I also like the over on 13.5 points plus rebounds for Jaden McDaniels. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the app today and use code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Okay, we're back. We've got a Parker Meadows question. So Yick says Parker Meadows graduated, but I'm curious where he might have fallen now after being in the 20s in the last rankings. So Meadows, he's not in the circle of trust by any means after what he did early in the season. But I still see stuff to be encouraged by with Meadows. The defense was as good as expected in center field. He was looking to run. So like those were two things I was valuing with him before the season, as I thought his defense would keep him in the lineup, and I thought he would be a potential 30 steal threat over a full season to go with some power as well. And I even thought he might lead off all season, but just the performance at the plate prevented any of that stuff from happening, obviously, right? So he's not able to steal bases, or he's killing your batting average. So that obviously didn't work well, but he's been really good. I mean, obviously, when a guy opens here in the majors and gets sent to AAA, you definitely expect him, or you would like to see him dominate at AAA. And Meadows has been doing that, especially lately. He's got eight extra base hits and 6 steals, and 5 strikeouts and 7 walks over his last 8 games at AAA. So, Meadows, the guy who's been at AAA, that's what I would have expected him to do at AAA. And it's just a question of, can he carry that over the next time he gets the call to the big leagues? I think he's a nice buy low in Dynasty. And I'm even, I can already picture myself adding him in redraft leagues whenever he gets the call, as long as it looks like there's going to be playing time for him. And that's another complicated part of this, is there's just, the Tigers just have a lot of guys that are about as good as each other vying for playing time. So no guarantee that he gets an everyday job in center field anytime soon again. But I still think there's a good player in there. I don't trust him, like I said at the beginning, but I still think there's a good player in there. I've got what is very close to a full list of players who exhausted their prospect eligibility since the start of the season. Not all these guys were on the top 400 prior to Friday's update. But there's like a group of like good guys and a group of mediocre guys. I think Meadows is kind of clearly in the middle there. You got Jackson Churio, Jared Jones, Colton Cowser, Cedar Rafaela, Wilyer Abreu, Luis Hill, Gavin Stone, Kyle Harrison, Mason Miller, Mason Wynn, Jackson Merrill, Joey Ortiz, Evan Carter. And then this is where I think you could start making a case for Meadows. Obviously, Ben Brown was fantastic yesterday. Colt Keith has started to heat up. Pete Crow Armstrong, Michael Bush. This is kind of where I've got like Meadows is where I would sort of slot him among guys that have graduated, is just after Crow Armstrong and Michael Bush, but ahead of the Ryan Rocchios and Curtis Meads and Nolan Shanwells and some interesting relievers, Justin Martinez and Ryan Kirkring, lots of guys like that. So I like trying to compare apples to apples. That's why I compared him to other guys that graduated. But, I was high enough on Meadows before the season, and he's been good enough since getting sent back to AAA that I think he'd still be kind of like a borderline top 50 guy for me now. But the fact that he played his way out of a job and now has to find his way back into a job without any guarantee that he'll ever hit enough to do that, it certainly adds some risk to the profile. All right, Hines says, can you explain what went into your decision to drop back Kyle Teel of the Red Sox? That's like, that's just a bad ranking. He ended up being too low. I definitely didn't intend for Kyle Teel to have down arrows next to his name. It's just kind of, it's like a catcher thing. I just kind of, I'll try to explain sort of my thinking, but Teel is a high floor catcher. He's going to be a useful fantasy catcher, I think, at worst. Maybe he's never a top 8 fantasy catcher or something like that, but a high floor catcher. I mean, there's a chance he could be a top 5 fantasy catcher if he gets enough playing time and kind of maximizes his power potential. But it felt like Teel and Agustin Ramirez of the Yankees, it felt like they should be kind of right next to each other. And I didn't want to bump Ramirez up into like the 60s or 70s. But in hindsight, I probably should have just put Ramirez up that high, put Teel up there with him. I moved Harry Ford past Teel on this update. I had concerns last year about Ford's home road splits, and it just seemed like all the damage he was doing was in the hitter-friendly park and Everett. But I think Ford's past Teel to me as a dynasty catcher, and longtime listeners know that I just don't like having too many catchers high in my rankings. But I think I erred on being too conservative with the Teel Ramirez catchers, and I should have just been willing to have 5 or 6 catchers in the top 75. But don't worry if you have Kyle Teel. Please, just nothing has really changed with Kyle Teel. Another catcher question here, Chief F. Are you back in on Dalton Rushing of the Dodgers after experiencing prospect fatigue, or is the jump more related to other players graduating from the list? So I do still have some fatigue with Rushing, just not my type of fantasy prospect, OBP over batting average catcher with questionable playing time, or at least immediate playing time outlook. But I do, I think you can look at Rushing and see a lot of stuff that he's improved on from last year. His hard hit rate and his contact rate are both up about 10% at AA compared to where they were at high A. And like Dalton Rushing is going to be a big leaguer. He's going to be a big leaguer for a while. You just don't necessarily know how much he's going to play with Will Smith still there, and obviously Shohei Ohtani. Maybe the Dodgers trade him, but I never want to assume a team is going to want to trade a good catching prospect just because they already have a bunch of catchers. So that's just big league teams love having good catching prospects. They aren't in a rush to trade them, even if it's a crowded situation. But I do think Rushing is a more intriguing hitter to me than he was last year. Paul Max says, what are you seeing in Miguel Bleis of the Red Sox to account for the double up arrows? Bleis is slashing 318, 408, 506 with 4 homers and a 20% strikeout rate in his last 21 games at single A. So he kind of he heated up sort of at the right time. And, for those who don't know, Bleis has a very high power speed ceiling. He just missed most of last year with shoulder surgery, so it was unclear what type of player he'd be coming back. We knew he added a lot of muscle, looked bigger in spring training, but he's kind of showing it all right now at single A. I would expect him to get the bump to high A soon. JC95. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Termarr Johnson of the Pirates. Even with him heating up the past week, I still expected to see the down arrows. Yeah, Johnson is a prime example of the limitations of the arrows, especially on this update. I would have expected to see down arrows with Johnson too, but double-digit players graduated ahead of him. He's got such a high pedigree, and that he's still so young that I just didn't want to overreact on a prospect of that caliber. He deserved to have a down arrow though, for sure. I think he could really benefit from a new approach at the plate. I'd like to see him be a bit more aggressive and make more contact as well, but I think at least be like when he was getting talked about as the best high school hitter since Joe Mauer and Ken Griffey Jr. A lot of that is putting the bat on the ball. I'd like to see him swing the bat a bit more and just put more balls in play. And he's really going to have to hit because he's not going to be a big plus defensively at second base. He might even be a negative. So this is kind of I thought Johnson deserved, a little bit more time to kind of play his way out of the rough numbers right now at high A. But if nothing's really changed on the next update, he'll probably have at least a down arrow, maybe double down arrow. So Johnson definitely deserved to have a down arrow, even though he does not on the update. Michael O'Brien says, how do you incorporate injuries into your rankings? Ronny Mauricio of the Mets has double up arrows, while Chase DeLauter of the Guardians has double down arrows. Was it more about DeLauter's performance before the injury, the fact that it's a repeat injury, and why the bump for Mauricio? So I tried to kind of hint at this with DeLauter ahead of time on like podcasts and stuff, but the numbers at AA really have like nothing to do with this. Maybe he wouldn't have dropped quite as far if like he'd just been absolutely mashing before the injury, but it's all about the injury. And he's 6'4", he's 235 pounds, he's an outfielder. This is going to put a ton of stress on a guy who's that big, playing the outfield that often. And here's the full list of injuries to his left leg / foot that I know of. So he broke his left foot during his junior year at James Madison in 2022. This is DeLauter. He had surgery in February 2023 for a broken fifth toe on his left foot. So that's a foot surgery, surgery on a toe on the same foot. He sprains the left ankle in July of 2023, and then he breaks his fifth toe again on that same foot this month, May 2024. So that's basically 2 years and 3 major injuries and 1 minor injury, and they're all to the left leg / foot / toe. So it's just, this is kind of the worst type of injury that you could have for a guy this big who's playing the outfield, because it's hard to make a case for why is he going to be more durable with this going forward. It just seems like a injury that he will probably deal with again. Maybe he can just put it all behind him. But I think just given the size, given the fact he plays the outfield, if you're someone who doesn't really care about past injuries and you maybe view it as sort of a market inefficiency to devalue oft injured players, then this is a prime opportunity to buy DeLauter from a more risk averse manager. But for me, I really worry about the durability factor there, and the fact that it broke the same toe again after having surgery. And they didn't go the surgery route this time, and it wasn't as long of an absence as I thought it'd be. But just it's something I'm worried about. As for Mauricio, so he doesn't have any of the past durability issues that DeLauter had, and is just a very, very safe asset in Dynasty between now and spring training next year. Mauricio can't really hurt his value, barring some sort of suspension or suffering an injury during his rehab. He just seems like a very safe asset here going forward. And the closer we get to 2025 opening day, the closer we are to being able to just plug him right back into our active lineups. And that's the exact type of prospect who benefits from the May update, where he's just going to benefit through the passage of time. As we get closer to opening day next year, he'll be just incrementally more valuable because you're closer to being able to use him. and he can't really hurt his value, and over a dozen guys graduated in front of him, so that's how he moved up, Mauricio. But yeah, just different types of things. One guy just keeps getting the same injury. One guy coming back from a serious injury, but a kind of a one-time deal. Then got a couple questions about Yilber Diaz of the Diamondbacks. He was the highest player who entered the rankings, just inside the top 100. So one question about, whether it was him adding a third pitch. One guy wants to know kind of about the arsenal. With Yilber Diaz of the Diamondbacks, it's really all about the control gains for him. He was someone that I featured in the offseason relief pitching prospect rankings article as a potential ninth inning option for the Diamondbacks in the coming years. But he went from that to showing enough command to where maybe he can start now. This is like the exact same path essentially as Jared Jones went on last year, where he entered 2023 as a potential high leverage reliever long term, and then he improved his command enough to be a starter. And he's obviously younger and more athletic probably than Diaz, but there's a case that Diaz has been the most dominant starter at AA this year. I know Dylan White's RoboScout has been loving Diaz. Just dropping from 14% walk rate in 2023 to a 10% walk rate. That's a huge improvement. That's basically going from the danger zone to not the danger zone. As to the pitch mix, his mid to upper 90s fastball has excellent ride and just a really dominant offering, and his curveball is just a total wipeout secondary pitch that has a massive velocity separation from the fastball. Those are still his go-to offerings. But he'll mix in like a slidery cutter type of thing and the occasional changeup. And but I was never sort of like, well, he's got to get the third pitch to where it is. When you've got that caliber fastball, that caliber of top breaking ball, in today's game, I generally assume you're going to be able to come up with something as a third pitch there. And he's just the top. When the top two pitchers are that good, it's more about just, can he throw enough strikes? But then, like, even say he and Dylan Cease, I think, was the kind of type of pitcher that Dylan White mentioned in terms of Diaz, with just that's what he could be, where it's just a ton of strikeouts, higher whip than you generally see from a high-end fantasy starting pitcher, but you're really kind of buying the bulk strikeouts there. And the other nice thing is this improved command, even if it doesn't result in Yilber Diaz being a high strikeout starter, I mean, it makes it kind of just a super easy move for him to go into the ninth inning. I think, entering the year, I might not even said he had good enough command to necessarily be the clear closer of the future for the Diamondbacks, but now he's kind of at the point where it's like, if the command is as good as he's shown thus far, he's probably a starter. And if it regresses a little bit, like, you're still potentially talking about a top 5 to top 10 closer. So just multiple avenues for Yilber Diaz to pay off fantasy managers at this point. And he's been at AA for a while, so he's kind of, I wouldn't expect him to be in the big leagues soon or anything like that. But I mean, he's a few good months away from potentially being in the big leagues. Etzel BFF was wondering about Filippo Di Turi of my Brewers, and he did not make the update. This is not a Caleb Durbin situation. I was actually like, I'm not making this up. Di Turi was literally the last guy I left off of the initial update. So he was right there in the mix, and he got named Arizona Complex League Player of the Week that same sort of week. So if I'd done the update a few days later than I did, Turi might have been in like the 200s. Just kind of a timing thing with this. Like you just got a bunch of complex league guys where it's just kind of like, yeah, he could be on there, he could be on there, and I just didn't think Turi's power and speed were long-term power and speed were intriguing enough to give him the nod over some other guys. But maybe the hit tool's just so good that he kind of maxes out his power. The Brewers always seem to kind of collect these types of just walk more than they strike out, smaller players, up the middle players going to add value with the glove, that type of thing. They've got a lot of these guys, but Turi could be one of the better ones. And if I were re-ranking, Turi would definitely be on there. So that was one. I actually got another question like this, but the timing of the update just kind of messed things up for the Turi ranking. And on that note, Camposit says, did the prospect update come out at the most unfavorable possible time for Adael Amador of the Rockies? Yes. I mean, you know that's going to happen. It's just such a challenge. The May update, the late May update, if I had my way, I would probably just do no updates until the draft, just because it's just such an incomplete portion of the season to be evaluating, and a lot changes. But part of the problem with Adael Amador is I did not have a ton of conviction on him and his eventual game power. The comp I've used for Amador in the past is the Rockies version of DJ LeMahieu per fantasy, where it's just batting average, it's runs. Amador could chip in, 10 to 20 steals maybe. But it's really you're buying the crazy high batting average and the 100 runs in peak seasons. And, that's definitely still in play for Amador, but it's a testament to how bad he was early in the season that he's hit 4 home runs in his last 8 games. 4 in his last 8 games, and he's still slugging 264 with a 19.8% hard hit rate on the year. So he went from basically 0 power to then 4 homers in 8 games. But I kind of have a feel the season line is, I don't think this is just going to be, all right, Amador's just hitting for power regularly going forward. We'll see. I mean, he'll be an interesting one for the post-draft update, because there will be fewer graduations and there will be a bunch of additions. So can he move back up? He certainly could. I mean, it was a bad time to do the update for Amador. Okay, Mayspot 33. I know the Rockies have no reason to rush, but does the Jordan Beck injury speed up the ETA for Yanquiel Fernandez, or still 2025 at the earliest if everything clicks? I don't think it affects Fernandez's ETA. Now, Fernandez is on the 40-man roster already, which, anyone on the 40-man roster could theoretically hit their way to the big leagues. But, part of what I loved about the Beck situation is the Rockies clearly prioritize, like, this is a guy we want to get to the big leagues. We're sending him to AAA. Okay, he's great at AAA for a month. We're bringing him up to the big leagues. That just kind of shows you where they were at with Beck heading into the season. And they sent Fernandez back to AA. Obviously, Beck's a couple of years older than Fernandez, so it makes sense that he'd be at AAA and Fernandez be at AA. But they could have sent Fernandez to AAA if they really wanted to, but they sent him back to AA. And there's some encouraging signs. The strikeout rate's down 10 points from 33 to 23. But he's been below league average. And like you said, they're last place. They don't have any reason to rush him. So, If I were them, like Fernandez, you want to be careful with a guy like that where the hit tool is kind of the only question with him. Just no reason to rush him. So yeah, I think wouldn't rule out 2024, especially if he heats up this summer. But from this guy's someone that you could get value out of in fantasy, I think 2025 is the earliest. All right, Mookie666 says, your old flame, Pedro Leon of the Astros, stats look much better this year, yet he doesn't crack the top 400. Is this a we are never, ever getting back together situation? I don't have any players where I'm just never going to give them a second look. But this is a case where there's just not a ton Pedro Leon could do. So this is his 4th year at AAA. Technically, he got a taste of AAA 1 year, but for 4 straight seasons, Pedro Leon has been at AAA, and it's his age 26 season. So under those circumstances, for a player heading to AAA for the 4th year, as a 26-year-old, I mean, the expectation should be that he's going to produce, right? This kind of a textbook quad A hitter type of case, at least until proven otherwise. And the biggest knock on Leon for a while, and what kind of led me to get much lower on him, even when I was still kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt offensively a little bit, but he's just such a bad defender. He doesn't have a defensive home, and it's confusing because he has the speed and he's got the arm to be a good defender in theory, but just gets really bad reads in the outfield. Passable at second base, but not great. So, I just think that type of player, we're basically talking about a guy where best case scenario, he's playing second base or left field for a second division team. So yeah, not going to give Pedro Leon the benefit of the doubt at age 26. David Scott says, Jace Avina of the Yankees has yet to crack your top 400. Anything in particular you still want to see from him? Avina's definitely got pop. I was pretty low on him when he was traded from Milwaukee in the Jake Bauers deal. So I've probably got some catching up to do with my evaluation on him. He's such a classic Yankees prospect, just selling out for power. 69% contact rate. It's not a deal breaker for a 20-year-old at high A with his caliber production, but he could be a short side platoon guy. But even if we don't think he's a short side platoon guy, how many times the Yankees just always have guys like this, right? Everson Pereira is not going to get a chance anytime soon. Spencer Jones is still hanging around the minors. They're just always going to have power hitting outfielders that are able to put up intriguing stats, but it's rare that the Yankees really kind of hand a job over to one of those guys. So he probably should be ranked, but I would say the numbers probably oversell his realistic big league upside. Exerson1 says, what is Felnin Celesten of the Mariners ceiling? And can Ralphy Velazquez of the Guardians make the same jump in prospect rankings that Xavier Isaac of the Rays made last season? So Celesten is a 5-tool shortstop. If he develops an above-average hit tool, we know he's got the 30 homer potential, 30 steal potential. He's like a 99th percentile baseball athlete. So Celesten, he's hitting more than I expected in his pro debut. I was expecting some bumps just in terms of the strikeouts. And I expected him to produce. I just didn't think it would just be this seamless for him. If we get to the point where Celesten is striking out 20% of the time as a 20-year-old at AA, he might be the number one prospect at that point. So that's the type of upside we're talking about. Just a question of, can he hit at each of these stops? Velazquez of the Guardians, he could eventually end up in the top 20 like Isaac. I will say I liked Isaac a little more than Velazquez at each stage of their development. Isaac's got a better body to me, kind of a slightly more electric bat. but Velazquez might end up with the better hit tool. I think Isaac's a 70 grade power type of guy. Velazquez more of a 60 grade power type of guy. But it's Velazquez so far. He's doing exactly what a first base prospect has to do. So you love to see it. Isaac, though, it's just he was kind of at another level for me just from an upside standpoint. But Velazquez certainly trending in that direction. All right, some Guardians talk here. Dr. Dave McDonald says, "Are any Guardians prospects have any Guardians prospects taken a big step forward or backward this season?" So Ralphy Velazquez, as I mentioned, first baseman. Jason Trurio, I think, is taking a bit of a step forward. Angel Gano, CJ Kafis, Alex Mooney, Matt Tugboat Wilkinson, Doug Nikhazy, I think, is taking a bit of a step forward. Andrew Walters, Guardians have a couple potential future closers on the farm, and Franco Ailman and Andrew Walters. Chase DeLauter's, recurring foot and leg issues on the left side are probably the one big negative regarding the Guardians farm system so far this season. But Angel Gano is a guy that probably doesn't get enough hype. He's someone I've added in shallower dynasty leagues this year. He had 7 homers in 164 games coming into the year and has 6 homers in 40 games this season. And that was kind of what we wanted to see from him, because Angel Gano was, he was a high pedigree international signing a few years ago. Just classic Guardians middle infield skill set where it's hit over power, a little bit of speed. He's going to help with the glove, all that stuff. So for him to take the step forward with the power this year, that's definitely the thing we wanted to see with Gano. So he's at single A. He's not that close to the big leagues, but big up arrow with Gano, and I think he's worth adding in shallower dynasty leagues. Another Guardians prospect to talk about. Big Goof says, curious to hear your thoughts on CJ Kafis. Yeah, Kafis, like Gano, up into the top 200 on this update. Kafis was a hit over power college first baseman, and it's still kind of a hit over power profile, but it seems like he's mastered the lift and pull strategy to maximize that raw power. Kafis has a 28% hard hit rate, which is just not that great for a first baseman, especially 22-year-old first baseman at high A. So there's not going to be much forgiveness for him if he gets to double A and the numbers really regress. For first base prospects, especially at this age, they just you want to see him really mash at each stop. But if he rakes at every stop, he could be a top 50 prospect by the time he graduates. So definitely more guys trending up than down in the Guardians farm system. One guy who's maybe trending down, Fireworks says, what is Juan Brito of the Guardians' likely MLB outcome? Utility guy or better? I'm lukewarm on Brito, more because of his defense. The Guardians always seem to stress quality defense, and that's the worst part of his game. He's just not a great athlete. He may hit enough to be like a Heimer Candelario type of fantasy third baseman, but that's really the realistic ceiling to me with Brito. So probably more of a util guy and maybe even a better fit on another team. Brennen Davis of the Cubs. A couple questions about Brennen Davis. Keith Schulte wanted to know if Davis had the most non-linear path on my prospect rankings that I can remember. I don't think you're going to see, maybe some listeners can help me out here, but I don't think you're going to see anyone who got into the top 5, then fell off the list completely and then got back on the list. And that's where we're at with Davis right now. I think probably probably the most non-linear path. I think that's fair, Keith. I wouldn't say I'm cautiously optimistic. I would maybe say I'm cautiously pessimistic with Davis. He's limited, I think, to being at best, he's a 3-category guy: homers, runs, and RBI. He hasn't hit better than 260 in any full season league since 2021. Some of that's the back, but his contact rate, his hard hit rate, they're not where you would necessarily want either of them to be for a guy his age at AAA. So I would still be kind of bearish on Davis becoming an everyday player. And then the fact that he just doesn't run anymore, that caps his upside too. But just given the pedigree and the caliber of power hitter that he's shown to be in the past, and the fact that like the back issue just completely sapped his power for basically a 2-year span. So the fact that he's hitting homers again, I mean, he's still on the 40-man roster. So there's enough here to, I think he's definitely a post-hype ad, if he's still out there in the Dynasty League. Even if it's not going to pan out, at least you'll kind of get to see where it goes with Davis over the next like month or two, and he's at AAA. So, that's a spot that, maybe he just cools off completely, maybe even heats up, and you get a bit more time to evaluate that. But I like the fact he's at AAA, and obviously he has the big time power potential. But we'll see where it goes with Davis. Okay. Last, how about we'll wrap things up here with some Mets pitching prospect questions. Got a bunch of other great questions I'll get to in the update. Lots of good prospects were asked about. I just ran out of time, but that article version will be up tomorrow. But let's wrap it up here with these Mets pitching prospect questions. Luke Anderson says, I'm seeing a lot of up arrows next to the young arms in the Mets farm system. What are the best case MLB outcomes for Christian Scott, Blade Tidwell, Brandon Sproat, Nolan McLean, and Jonah Tong? I'm really glad someone asked about this. This was the clearest theme of the update for me. Mets pitching prospects are back. There was a time kind of like, this is kind of around when I was first getting really, really into baseball prospects and Dynasty, when they had, DeGrom and Harvey and Syndergaard all coming up. I think David Stearns, obviously he built the Brewers starting pitching machine. I think he's just well on his way to doing the exact same for the Mets. Christian Scott, I think could, I had a question about Christian Scott. Can he be an ace? I think Christian Scott could be every bit as good as like peak Shane Bieber, peak Aaron Nola, even. Maybe even some George Kirby in there too. Like it's that type of upside. And so at some point, all those guys were SP1s. Wasn't a long time at the top for Bieber. And there's actually been ups and downs with a guy like Nola, but to have as good a command as Scott has and a full starter's repertoire, mid-90s fastball, it's just kind of, short of a Paul Skeens type of just freak. It's kind of everything I want to see. I love where Scott's arsenal and command is. I love the home park. Just tailor-made for fantasy. Tidwell, Sproat, McLean, just power all day with those three guys. Number 2 starter, big league ceilings for all three of those guys, I think. Maybe in a bit more potential. There's a lot to like. They throw really hard. They've got big time breaking balls. I think Tidwell especially is very exciting, and we could see him at some point later this year. Jonah Tong, he's kind of more in the like Christian Scott category of, it's not just power in your face necessarily, but he's still got a good fastball, good command, good movement on the fastball. So that was definitely the theme I noticed on the update as well. So I'm glad someone asked me about that. Mets pitching, it's back. Hopefully they can stay somewhat healthy. Obviously they're not all going to stay healthy, but exciting times for the Mets. And that'll do it for today's show. Brought to you by Prize Picks, of course. Use code ROTOPOD to get a 100% deposit match over at Prize Picks. And I will have the article version of this up tomorrow morning. Sorry, kind of battled a cold today, but thanks for hanging with me.